Thank you so much. Jeff, thank you. That was fabulous. And I just wanted to point out, because I'm going to use some of his data too, that Jeff is also affiliated with something called the Great Lakes Integrated Sciences and Assessment, which is joint MSU and UM. And so some of the data I'm going to share. Can I steal you? Can I steal that? You're awesome. Thank you. We're sharing. This is a really good fundamental principle in this space. We use a lot of Gleesa's data in the work that we do. And if you haven't looked at it, the material Jeff shared is really powerful. And the Gleesa website has a lot more information that you can look at too. So what I want to do today is first thank you for creating space for me to come up and talk. I want to frame this really quickly by saying I think about resilience in everything that I do. And that's what I studied. That's what I've worked on for the last 18 years. And it's what I do at the city. So I've been there for a very short period of time. I've lived there for a while. But when I talk about resilience, and you may hear me say it, I think about three things. It's how are we going to mitigate or reduce our greenhouse gas emissions? It's how are we going to adapt to the climate impacts that are already here, as well as what's coming, because we have momentum in the climate system. We're going to keep feeling impacts. And third, how do we ground that in equity? Because the reality is those most impacted by the effects of climate change are those who did the least to contribute to the problem. So we have to be thinking about equity, at least we have to in our office. That is an unequivocal statement that we need to be thinking about equity in the work we do. So I'm going to walk you through just a little bit of what is happening. Ooh. Broken. Sorry.
You did?
I did?
Which one?
Oh, no, I didn't. I just used the wrong button. That's what happens when you go to UM. What can I say? All right. So I'm going to give you just quick three things I'm going to talk through, and I'm going to go very fast because I want to leave a lot of time for questions. So Jeff did a fabulous job walking through global climate change, regional climate change, and then certainly in the state. I just want to tell you a little bit about what's happening in Ann Arbor. So what this is, we have this on our website, and I can share this with anyone who wants it. This is what has already happened, what we've already experienced in Ann Arbor in terms of change. We've already experienced about a degree of warming. And just like Jeff said, if you look at the precipitation figures, we've already experienced an annual increase in precipitation of 44%. Right, that's not debatable. We know.
It's the highest in the state.
Thank you very much. It is the highest in the state. We're not excited about that. The other variable I want to point out is those extreme events. We've experienced a 37% increase in extreme events. That's 37% more rainfall that's falling during an extreme rainfall event. And all of those are projected to continue. So this is what we see. We saw it last week with rain that moved through the region, and we had a lot of localized flooding. And here is another reason, if I go the right way, why this matters. Has anyone been to a game in this stadium?
No.
Don't go. Okay. All right. Well, it's really hard to understand if I'm telling, I imagine for you to say, we've had a 37% increase in precipitation. You're like, that seems like a lot, but I have no idea what you're talking about. Let me put it in perspective. If you had to guess how many Michigan stadiums worth of rain fall on the city of Ann Arbor every year? Throw out a number. 20, 10. 5. 100. You are close, sir. 117. 117 Michigan stadiums worth of rainfall in the city. And here's what I want you to know. That's 23 more than 30 years ago. We designed a stormwater system. We designed our entire city to handle an amount of precipitation that is moving. That is that much more rain that is falling, and often in extreme events that cannot be absorbed by our system, right? So we know this is already happening. This isn't projections, right? This is the reality here today. So with that being said, my office thinks about kind of sustainability, which is a term that means good or bad, a lot of things to a lot of different people, right? So when I think about sustainability, I think about the Brundtland Commission, which is kind of the origin of that term. And that's about how do we meet the needs of today, of you all, of me, of my daughter, but how are we also ensuring that future generations can meet their own needs? Right? So I just want to put that out there when I talk about it. So the city has been working on climate and environmental issues for a very, very long time. In 2012, the city formally adopted its first climate action plan, and these were some of the goals that were in that plan. And at the time, these were really good goals. By 2015, an 8% reduction in community-wide greenhouse gas emissions, by 2025, a 25% reduction, and by 2050, a 90% reduction. Here's what the science tells us. We need to halve global greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. That's science. That's the most recent knowledge that we have out of the IPCC. Because 2 degrees is not acceptable, folks. 1.5 degrees is really the point at which we're going to start seeing pretty catastrophic impacts. And as you've heard, some systems have already hit it. So this is really urgent. So our office operates under the premise that these are really good floors, not ceilings, to operate under. So what we did, while the city has done sustainability work for a long time, we just formally created an Office of Sustainability. My boss is the head of the city, and that was one fundamental shift, is that they picked sustainability up kind of from buried pretty far in the organization and elevated it. So there was no one between me and the main decision maker in the city. And that's really, really important. And that was actually the only reason I took the job, because I didn't want anyone else interpreting my words and the things that we're working on, right? Because I don't want sustainability to be one of 10 priorities someone is reporting to the city administrator on, right? I wanted it to be the thing when we're in conversations that we talk about. So when I started with the city, the first thing we did is say, okay, we've got this target of 2025. How are we going to hit it? But again, not just hit it, we need to blow through it. So we created a 5-year work plan, and I want to tell you about some of the things we're working on in that work plan right now. If we're successful, we'll hit a 35 to 40% reduction by 2025. So that's what we're working on. But it's not just about climate change. So as we did this planning, we really did think about the co-benefits, because we need to bring lots of people, if not every person in the community, along on this journey with us. And so we thought really strategically about equity, right? About creating local jobs, about economic development. So this ring are the co-benefits of the strategies, and so we lead with different things when we talk to different people. I'm gonna lead with climate change, because I figured you came to a talk about climate change for a reason, and that's what it's called. So if you want to talk about other things, I'm happy to do that too. And so these are the priorities that we have. Like most cities, we budget on a 2-year process. So we just got through our budget. I pitched to council that these were the programs that we're going to work on. And I'm just going to walk through very, very quickly these, and they're going to be super condensed. We are in the process of redoing our website, and you can find our work plan on it right now, but there'll be much more detail coming. I have to always apologize when people look at our website because it's tragic. Here is what I will tell you. We've been really, really busy working on policy and not on our website. So that is a flaw on our end, and I own that flaw, but it's coming. I've been chastised enough by enough people that I'm going to work on that. Okay, so housing. What folks may not know is Ann Arbor is 55% rental. So we have a very large rental population, primarily because of the student population, but also because it's a very expensive place to buy. It is very expensive. So our rental, when we kind of, again, we're thinking about these programs and thinking about targeting that market and thinking about equity, one of the things we acknowledged, we have a really strong safety culture around rental housing. So every unit gets inspected to make sure it's safe to put on the market. And we thought, what if we tag on an energy efficiency requirement? What if we work with our landlords and our tenants and kind of create another floor that says, if you rent in Ann Arbor, you have to meet this standard of efficiency. And if you don't, you can't rent. So we're working on that program right now, pulling together, again, landlords and tenants and dealing with the power dynamic, because power isn't equal in those conversations. The only other community in the nation who has this is Boulder. And for Ann Arbor, we actually look a lot like Boulder 10 years ago. We're growing, we're expensive, we're dealing with an affordability crisis, we're dealing with a climate crisis, we have a major institution. And so we look to Boulder both for ideas, but also for warnings of things that didn't work out quite according to plan. On the other side of the aisle, we have our homeowners. And because Ann Arbor is a very expensive place, one of the things we very much so want to do is make sure when you buy, you know about the efficiency of that home. So similar to, has anyone bought a house recently? Yeah, right, okay. Well, has anyone like me sometimes just look and like, what if I lived in Hawaii? And you just kind of like look at the houses. If you have not done that, it's fun. But if you look at them, you get all kinds of information, right? You can get great school scores. You can get information on crime rates in the area. We want people to be able to get information on the energy efficiency of that unit. So we're working right now to figure out what would be kind of a standard way that we could score all homes that go on the market so you can get that information. And then how, for both of these programs, do we build kind of a support infrastructure or ecosystem around them so that we have financiers with low interest loans or grant programs to help people do improvements, whether that's in rental or in their homes. How are we bringing in the utilities to offer rebates to people to do this work? How are we training the next generation of workforce to be able to do this? So we're kind of creating a whole ecosystem in this space. The other thing we're doing is a net zero energy affordable housing program. We have, I don't use the word crisis lightly, but I think that we have two primary crises that we're facing in Ann Arbor. One's an affordability crisis and we have a climate crisis. We have thousands of people waiting on affordable housing lists, and we just can't build affordable housing fast enough. So one of the things that we decided to do was to partner with our Housing Commission colleagues and to help kind of fund the incremental difference to do greater efficiency work, electrification, and renewables on their buildings. And what that means now is all of that money that they're saving in their utilities is getting reinvested into the programs for those residents at the housing commissions or into new units. And we think this is a really, really important statement, and we're excited to be partnering on it. We also know that Michigan is aging. I think, I'm gonna get the number wrong, but it might be 2025, 2030. We're expected to have more people over 65 than under 18 in Michigan. And so thinking about this, a lot of people have been doing, I know you can't read this, but a lot of organizations are really, really thinking about how we help people age in their home in terms of the services we provide, because that is really important to having better health outcomes, to being healthier and to having a longer, fulfilling life. But what no one had been thinking about is how do we match that with energy efficiency improvements? Because if you're going into someone's home or residence to help them put things like hydraulics on their stove so it can come up or down if you're in a wheelchair or not, or you're widening walls, that's a really good time to do things like insulation, or to upgrade windows, or to caulk, or to do other things. And so we're working with our social service entities and our energy efficiency experts in the community to tie them together and actually launch a program focused on our low-income seniors so we can free up more capital for them to invest, whether that's in medical expenses, transportation, or to just have discretionary funding. This is impossible to read, I now recognize from where you sit. This is a catch-all. One of the things we're working on is just efficiency and solar throughout the whole community. So that's things like on Saturday, I'll be in a resident's living room with her and 25 of her neighbors, and we're gonna talk about her solar installation. And her installer is coming in to tell everyone, answer any technical questions they have about solar. I'll be there to talk about it from the city's perspective and the permitting process. And if anyone signs up, they're all getting discounts because we've done all the recruiting work for the solar. We've brought everyone in without the solar installer having to do it. So how do we have more of those things? Because it's great that you came out, but many people don't go to things like this. But they'll go to their neighbor's house where they trust that neighbor. And so we're trying to think about how we really kind of meet people in their places and in different places. We're also working on a concierge. Basically, we call it the bat phone. You know, like if you have a question, this is really confusing. And the landscape constantly is changing. So can you have just one line that you call and you can get the information you need about what rebates are being offered right now, or what could I do in my home? Could you send someone out to talk to us? So we're trying to kind of create an ecosystem that's really supportive of people doing this work. I also should have said I talk very fast, so I do apologize. And then the city has another goal to power our municipal operations with 100% clean and renewable energy by the year 2035. Our goal is 2025, but it's really 2022. So we're gonna try to hit that. That's our office's goal. And we're doing things like energy efficiency, renewable energy for sure. We're working on an internal electrification policy. We have a revolving energy fund, so if people haven't budgeted the capital to make the improvements, we have a source of funding that we can loan them at, a zero interest loan, and then they pay back through energy savings, so all departments can access that. And then we're working with the University of Michigan on battery storage as an alternative. So these are just some of the sites that mean nothing to you, I'm sure, but these are places where we're working on an RFP to have on-site solar. And they range from our large users to really iconic places in the community, because we also have value of the community seeing it. And then two other programs, quickly. It would be super naive for me to assume that we had all of the answers and ideas about what to do with this. So we launched a grant program where our residents can apply to get up to $10,000 to do something related to sustainability in the public space. So you couldn't apply to get $10,000 for solar on your roof, but you could apply for a community tool shed. You could apply for some green infrastructure in an area of the community that floods. We've had students apply and receive a grant fund to develop solar curriculum for K through 5. And then they're also using those resources and fundraising to put solar on the roof. We've had neighbors apply to do composting education in their region, and they won a grant. And then we just awarded a grant to the 2030 district in Ann Arbor to help baseline every business in that district's energy use and water use so that we can help be more effective in terms of partnering with them to reduce those consumption patterns. And then the last program I'll talk about is resilience hubs. This is really complicated and deserves like 20 minutes by itself, but the basic idea here is how do we make sure that our neighborhoods maintain the power and the control so that they can be building their overall resilience to any kind of impact that happens. This is about how do we make sure the community is activated for 9,999 days with everything that they need. And I don't know what that is because every neighborhood needs things that are different. But that one day where there's a disaster, I know that we can come in and make sure that this community center, if that's what it is, has solar and storage. It's got a commercial kitchen, it's got medical supplies, and it's got diapers, and it's got telecommunications. So if a true disaster were to rip through Ann Arbor and we couldn't get to those residents in 24 hours, they're okay, right? Because we built social cohesion, we've also got a physical place for them to go. And we're at the very beginning of this process. We're one of 5 communities nationally that's kind of taking this on. And our very first step this summer, what we did, were ice cream parties. And I kid you not, because when neighbors know neighbors, you're much more likely to take care of your neighbors. And so we just brought the food and the space and let people talk, right? And so this is going to be a long journey, but it's part of what I care very, very deeply about. So just to close out, I didn't talk a lot about this, but basically Jeff identified this. We're doing an unprecedented experiment with the climate system. We are putting far more greenhouse gas emissions in that system and changing that system at a rate that's causing erratic impacts and actually unanticipated. You know, science is constantly evolving and changing, and what we thought was the most extreme case is constantly being proven to not have been that extreme. We have until 2030 to halve global greenhouse gas emissions to avoid the most serious and significant impacts of climate change. I take that really seriously. I think cities have an incredible role to play. I'm also very, very biased. I've spent my entire professional career working with cities and tribes, indigenous populations, and counties on this work. But the good news is we know what we need to do, and we actually have the skills to do it. This isn't, in fact, rocket science. This is something that we could do. What we generally lack is the political will to do it. And so for me, this is my daughter. She is 4. In 2030, she will be 15, right? When we put projections out to 2100, she'll be 85, right? This isn't a joke. And I know it's not a joke to you either, but this is what makes me want to cry, and this is what makes me get inspired every day to get up and do this work, because it matters so much. So with that, I'll say, even if we're all wrong, and we're not, because this is real, the co-benefits are vast for the work that we're doing. And so this matters. And I look forward to causing trouble with you all and disrupting the status quo together. So thank you very much.